My hair is doing all kinds of shit today. This is not acceptable. Alright. When in doubt, hat. So I don't know if you guys know this, but politics is everywhere nowadays. And it seems like every time I open my phone, there's some news story about how some crazy new stuff is popping off and the world as we know it is coming to an end. And this has ultimately led to a rise in political activism, and people who normally don't really give a shit about politics are actually now talking about it, myself included. Despite the fact that show business and Hollywood have really always kind of been my thing, if you've seen my Instagram lately, link in the description, then you'll see that I post about politics really more than anything nowadays. And it's not like I want to, but at the same time, I think I would much rather overshare my political beliefs than stay quiet and have people just make assumptions about me and lump me in with the wrong people. I think that talking about stuff that happens in the real world is important, if not essential, for two reasons. One, because it's good to be informed so that when something does go down, at the very least, it's not sneaking up on you. And two, because it shows that we're not blinded by our need to protect our own personal peace at all times, and are willing to be uncomfortable temporarily because it helps us in the long run. But over the last few months, there has been one particular conversation that, to me, is just as polarizing as it is oddly informative. And that would be The Necessary Conversation, which is a podcast run by Chad Coltgen, and I'm hoping I said that correctly, and his sister Haley. In it, they talk with their Trump-worshipping, no, not Trump-supporting, Trump-worshipping parents in an attempt to change their mind and get them to see that the orange man isn't the amazing guy that they think he is. They cover a lot of topics, ranging from the Epstein files all the way to the nonsensical claims that this administration makes on pretty much a daily basis. And unfortunately, at least as of the recording of this video, Chad and Haley's efforts to get their parents to see even the slightest little sliver of reason, in my opinion, it has been ineffective. And I'm not the only one who thinks that. You can check the comment section of any of their YouTube or even their TikTok videos from over the last couple of months, and you'll find them filled with people saying that the conversation is, in fact, no longer necessary.
Do you guys watch that podcast of that son and daughter and they talk to their parents? I think it's called The Necessary Conversation. There's clips on TikTok about it all the time, but it's a whole podcast. It is time to cancel that. Like, I don't mean to cancel them, but like they need to shut it down. That conversation is no longer necessary.
Y'all got it ass backwards. Democracy has to go.
Okay.
What does that mean?
Yeah, what?
What if Donald Trump says, I want you to carpet bomb Oklahoma City, everyone? You think the Air Force should carry that out?
Yes.
There might be a reason, we don't know.
So I want to start off by being the first to tell the unholy union of Walt Kowaleski and Henry J. Waternoose that is this piece of to go himself for actively supporting the carpet bombing of my home state.
Every video is essentially the same vicious cycle, and it's Chad and Haley using facts and verifiable data that contradicts the beliefs of their parents, Bob and Mary Lou. But the end result is them always getting shut down because, well, you guessed it, the facts and verifiable data contradict the beliefs of Bob and Mary Lou. But I want to get into the nitty-gritty of it all and find out why people are saying that the conversation really is no longer necessary and whether or not they're right. To do that, I would first like to start off with what I think this podcast does right and then go into my critiques, of which, and I won't lie to you, I have quite a bit of.
It is a big cycle of money. These people are simply dollar signs to Donald Trump. That is the entire game here.
I don't agree with you on that.
That's literally true.
So starting off with the most obvious thing that I think they do right, and that is simply having the conversations they have in a world where people are always telling you to keep your political opinions to yourself. A sentiment that I have found myself disagreeing with more and more as I get older. Like I said before, these conversations are uncomfortable to have. but they need to be had. I mean, what's the point of developing or even maintaining a long-term relationship with someone if you're not willing to ask where they stand morally because, oh, that's just not something you're supposed to talk about? You know, it just kind of seems to me like that's a really bad excuse to stay in your happy little bubble where everything is fine and happy and no one ever fights about anything and nothing is ever negative and I know where this person stands politically, but I'm not going to talk to them about it because I know deep down their answer's probably going to hurt me and I can't handle that. You know, but I got news for you guys. That's not reality. I think we need to reasonably be uncomfortable from time to time because it builds character and confidence. And the way I see it is, if we're always comfortable, are we ever really learning anything? So I genuinely do admire that Chad and Haley are willing to consistently talk with people who could really not be further away from them politically and apparently morally, especially given that the people they argue with are their own parents. And that's another thing. Chad has been very open about the fact that for a period of time, he and Haley didn't talk to Bob and Mary Lou. But as time went on, they slowly started communicating more and more, and in Chad's own words, the podcast has even made it easier to talk to them about non-political topics because he and Haley have set the boundary that everything political needs to be said almost exclusively on the podcast, which has made in-person visits a little bit easier for them. You could argue that it even makes things easy for their audience as well. I hear stories all the time about how people cut off their MAGA parents because of their unwavering support for Donald Trump, and as difficult as it is to go no contact with your parents, even if they are MAGA, this podcast, I believe, gives those people the comfort of knowing that, at the very least, they're not alone. So for better or for worse, this podcast has created a space for people who have lost their family to politics. But that's pretty much where all the good things I have to say about the podcast itself come to an end, really. Like I said, I do admire what they're doing, but this podcast is based around political discussions and is bound to seem problematic at times because of that fact. One of the more recent complaints I've seen is that people are saying that Chad and Haley are exploiting their parents' ignorance for views, even uploading key moments from the podcast in order to get engagement from their audience.
Y'all got it ass backwards. Democracy has to go.
Okay.
What does that mean?
Yeah, what?
It means we need to kill democracy
Why?
because we are a republic. And the republic is what made America great, not the democracy.
I don't understand even what you're saying. Do you think that...
I know you don't understand it because you don't understand the difference between democracy and the republic.
Whilst I understand where people are coming from, I do think they're looking at it the wrong way. First of all, uploading the more explosive moments of this kind of conversation for engagement, I mean, that's content creating 101. And to their credit, it's hardly clickbait.
You're too damn stupid to realize your biggest enemy is Somalia. It ain't President Trump.
I also don't think that what they're doing is exploitative per se, because that would mean that Chad and Haley are putting their parents in a difficult position to where they have to be on the podcast or face some kind of consequences. I don't know the family personally, but from what I have seen, I really doubt that's the case. We've seen Bob and Mary Lou's house, so I doubt that at the very least Chad and Haley would have some kind of financial hold over them. And even though I couldn't really find any reliable evidence that Chad and Haley give their parents a cut of the podcast's earnings, I don't think it's crazy to assume that that's the case. Even if it isn't, it's still not exploitative simply because, as far as any of us know, they're not forced to be there. I think the real problem is that even though Chad and Haley do have good intentions, they are still giving a platform to people who have atrocious values. Even if it's in the name of educating their loved ones, they are still giving a microphone to people who wave their ignorance and hatred around like it's a badge of honor. Like the rest of us are so stupid because we should all be on their side and we're not. And that's something that they've actually said before. And that brings us to the undisputed loudest issue with the podcast. Bob himself.
You better man up and just decide you're going to be on our side because eventually you're not going to have a choice.
If you've seen the podcast, then you'll know that Mary Lou, bless her heart, at least she makes attempts, allegedly, to read the news.
In the Epstein files, it said that he absolutely did not want any black children coming to the island for him, just FYI.
Just FYI, that's fake and false. If he's a racist, why did he help Jennifer Hudson's family when they lost everything and everybody was murdered in her family and he paid for everything?
And his son-in-law is Jewish.
Why would he back HBCU, the historical black college university, at $255 million a year? Why did he bring that initiative to the White House? Why did he forgive $300 million to those same people for debt forgiveness? Why, if you're calling him a racist, how do you support that? And he also supports a lot of black civic rights leaders. So
he has to do that for the optics so that people like you can say he's not racist.
She's not always successful, and she most certainly cherry picks what aligns with her current beliefs, but she allegedly tries to do research. She tries to bring receipts. Whereas Bob has, he's just gotten completely lost in the sauce, dude. This man does no research at all. And in fact, this is a man who has repeatedly endorsed violence, has said that he would be all for his own children getting gunned down by the military, if that's what Trump wanted, and constantly calls Chad and Haley communists. And he also says that all the communists in California deserve to die, simply for being communist.
What if Donald Trump says, I want you to carpet bomb Oklahoma City, kill everyone? You think the Air Force should carry that out?
Yes.
there might be a reason. We don't know.
This is insane.
You cannot be this stupid. Jesus Christ.
Oh, my. This podcast was going well until that.
You just said it's cool. We levels Oklahoma. You're like, yeah, it. There must be a reason. Like, you literally can't be that dumb.
You know what the problem is? Mom and I don't believe he'll ever blow up Oklahoma because we're on his side and so's the whole state.
No, it's because you're in a cult.
You guys are worried and afraid because you live in a state where it might happen.
Okay, let's theoretically say that does happen. Let's say Trump sends in the Marines to Los Angeles, California, and let's say I'm out going to see a movie on a weekend, and he says, go into that shopping mall.
Under a truck.
Quiet piggy. He says, go into that shopping mall and kill everyone you see. And let's say I get gunned down by the Marines for just being at a mall.
Okay, number one.
All for
let's just take
Okay,
it
Dad,
one step
wait a minute,
further.
Mom, wait 1 second. Dad, hang on, Mom. Dad, you just said you are for Donald Trump murdering me for no reason, and you would support that.
If he walks into a mall to people with military,
There has to be a reason.
there's a reason. And I'm all for it. And the people in Los Angeles, California are as deserving of execution as the assholes in New York City. You're all communists.
And I'm not trying to be insulting, but I don't think Bob actually knows what communism is. And I'm not trying to defend communism. I'm not a communist myself. But I don't think that he really knows what that means. I think it's just a big word that he wants people to know that he knows. I would honestly be very surprised if he could even spell that word, in spite of the fact that it is very much a part of the man's daily vocabulary. But the interesting thing about Bob is that he is almost the perfect candidate to be a part of MAGA. Quick backstory on Bob: he was the son of a teen mom and was adopted as a baby. It didn't get much better because he had a pretty tough upbringing on account of the fact that he had terrible parents. To the man's credit, he's never shied away from that fact. He's never really shied away from the truth about how he was brought up, as well as the fact that his upbringing is really what shaped him into the person he is today.
So, Bob, your values were work hard, be the best.
Well, you have to remember I was adopted, so you had to be the best.
How old were you when you were adopted?
3 months.
So where did that come from that you have to be the best?
Well, you feel like you got thrown out with the bathwater. You'll find out if you go back and do your research, most overachievers or most adopted kids are overachievers.
Okay. Feel like you have to make up for something, prove something?
You always have to prove.
Did you have a good upbringing?
No, my parents were terrible.
I'm so sorry.
They were bad.
His biological parents, his mother was very young when
15.
she knew that she was pregnant. She decided, after speaking with her mother, that it would be best to put Bob up for adoption. So she went to the hospital, had him, left the hospital, and never came back. And we found all this out because Bob did want to know the records. And through the Catholic Social Service, I found records. And he was left at the hospital, is what happened. Yeah. And then went to the Catholic Social Service with nuns that took care of him for 3 months. They said he was a happy baby and that they would walk by and pick him up and love on him and then put him back down and walk past. So then he was adopted to the family that he grew up with.
So when you had kids, Bob, were you determined to not repeat those same ways? Did you think about it?
No, I was determined to make them the best they could be.
Machines.
So you didn't feel loved as a child?
Hell no.
I'm so sorry. That's really sad.
And to this day, he still talks about being left in the hospital. It's really sad. It is.
But the issue is that Bob is actively using his trauma as an excuse to justify his immovable support for Donald Trump and everything he does. The MAGA community itself is filled to the brim with, for lack of a better word, losers. And I don't mean that in just the typical insulting sense that people are so used to hearing. I mean it's filled with people who have quite literally never wanted anything. It's filled with people that have never accomplished anything. The silent majority of MAGA are people who feel abandoned by society and come from impoverished areas, have little to no education, don't have a stable job or really any job at all. Some of them lost a family member, maybe more than one. A lot of the time, they don't really have a lot of friends in the real world, and even though a lot of them do their best to hide it, many people in the MAGA movement are people who are chronically depressed. And yet in Bob's case, he's actually very successful, having made lots of money, living in a nice house, being in a loving marriage, and raising two empathetic human beings with strong moral values and personal convictions. People who use their voices and their platforms to speak about issues that so many people would rather just stay silent about. And sadly, it just doesn't seem to be enough for Bob. And instead of being someone who cares for his fellow man because of his experiences, Bob has become a sad, lonely little boy who's just mad at the world because he never got the love and attention he needed from mommy and daddy. And mind you, I'm not trying to be snarky when I say that. I don't want to invalidate Bob's experiences because even though no sane person would ever agree with a word of what comes out of his mouth, he also never asked to have the upbringing that he had. At the same time, it's frustrating to see that instead of trying to break the cycle of generational trauma, Bob has instead chosen to exhibit actual sociopathic behavior. And I'm not trying to diagnose anybody, okay? I'm just a guy on the internet, I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a doctor, and it doesn't help that mental illnesses, by and large, are nothing if not complicated. But the proof is in the pudding. No hypothetical or real-world event proposed to Bob thus far has been too extreme for him to denounce and simply say, no, I don't support that. Bob instead openly delights in violence and relishes in the suffering of innocent people, sometimes even encouraging it.
Dad, if you were president of the United States, what is the first thing you'd do?
I would bomb Venezuela.
I can be empathetic, but also know that whatever happened to you growing up, no matter how horrible it was, it's never an excuse to be a heartless monster and wish the worst upon people that didn't even do anything to you. But Bob's trauma is what it all goes back to. It's this mindset of, oh, well, I suffered, so now everyone needs to suffer too, because that's only fair. It's also why he vehemently denies everything Chad and Haley tell him. Because accepting the truth would mean that he also has to accept that the community he's a part of is, and always has been, a scam. And for someone who grew up yearning for a sense of belonging, that's no easy feat. Because of this, Bob can't accept the truth no matter how irrefutable it is. It just doesn't seem like it's in his DNA. Hell, half the time, it doesn't seem like he even has any interest in having the conversation. Sometimes in the middle of the podcast, the guy just stares off into space or just starts watching TV or just full on goes blah, blah, blah.
Anybody can
all
transition.
1,700 of them in 10 years.
Anyone can transition from a male to a female.
Let's fly.
Dad, I got a question for you. What are you watching?
What am I watching?
Yeah. What are you looking at off screen there?
The screen's on, but there's no sound or anything.
Don't have noise.
So what are you watching? It's taking your attention away from the conversation.
I'm just staring into space. Is that all?
What?
He said he's staring into space.
I can't just look out.
You're watching TV. I can see you doing it.
It's Newsmax. It's Newsmax. It's Newsmax.
But there's nothing on there.
Then what are you looking at?
Well, right now, okay, if you want to know what's on there right now, there's a simple heart cure heart test 9/11.com.
Okay, can you turn that off so that you're present in this conversation with us?
No, just leave it alone. I'm tired of turning the TV on and off in here.
I think you are here to learn self-worth, self-acceptance.
I already have that.
You don't. Not in the right way. It's why you're so mad at everything all the time. It's because you feel some kind of deficiency. I think. This is my 2 cents. I'm not a therapist. I have gone to no school. I just have known you for 50 years.
Blah, blah, blah.
Like, dude, if you're just gonna act like an actual 5-year-old and cover your ears and go, la 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 la, I can't hear you, I can't hear you, I can't hear you, and just be manic the whole time and make a fool of yourself, then what are we even doing here? What's the point of any of this if you're not even gonna be open to the idea of changing? This is actually the overall problem that people have with the necessary conversation, and that is that nothing ever changes. No matter what Chad and Haley say, no matter how definitive the evidence is, no matter how nice or mean they are in their approach, no matter how undeniable the truth may be, Bob and Mary Lou never concede to anything. This leads to screaming matches and incoherent ramblings about Fox News and Newsmax talking points about Biden and Obama and the Democrats. And it's like, dude, all I did was ask you about the economy. Like, what are we doing here? And this begs the question, why are they continuing with the podcast when nothing ever really changes? Well, for this, we actually have an answer. Chad has said that the reason he persists with the podcast is because, in spite of everything they believe, he and Haley still love their parents. And by not having these conversations and standing idly by while they are further sucked into this cult, this administration ultimately wins.
I don't want my parents to die, and my sister and I have no relationship with them as that starts to happen. Health starts declining and they need our help, but we're not even talking to them, that kind of shit. And I was just ultimately made a decision, like, I'm not going to let Donald Trump and the kind of people who control this media apparatus steal my family. And I realized it was like on me to do that. My parents were never going to come to the table. I would have to be the one, or my sister would have to be the one to reach out and say, like, can I convince my parents to do a podcast with me where we talk about politics for an hour a week? My mom she's always kind of wanted to be famous, honestly. I knew that's how I would appeal to her. Mm-hmm. My dad then would not like my mom to have a spotlight if he didn't also have one. I knew that's how I would appeal to him. And my sister was, she's a good sport and funny, and she was down to do it.
But the way I see it, the way I think most people would see it, is that it's probably too late for Bob and Mary Lou. And I know that's easy for me to say because I grew up with parents that, even though we definitely had our ups and downs over the years, who hasn't, we never had a difference in morality that was this extreme. Even so, I understand why it's probably hard for Chad and Haley to come to terms with the fact that maybe this is all a moot point. But at the end of the day, you can't change someone who doesn't want to change. You can't want it more than they should want it. And they've made it perfectly clear that they don't want change. And if anything, believe Chad and Haley should be the ones to change.
So you better man up and just decide you're going to be on our side, because eventually you're not going to have a choice.
I'll never be on your side because I'm not a Nazi.
No, you're going
We
to
are
be
not
you're a
Nazis.
communist.
Oh
We
my
understand that.
gosh.
You guys are Nazi sympathizers.
But again, these are Chad and Haley's parents, and they love them, and I understand that. But Chad and Haley, if by some miracle you guys are watching this video, wake up and smell the Kool-Aid, assuming your parents didn't drink every last drop of it. No matter how badly you want it for them, they do not want to change, and there's nothing more you can really do about that. So let's answer the question, is the conversation truly no longer necessary? On one hand, I do believe, yes, it still kind of is, because it is true that the moment we stop having the conversation is the moment where things really are never going to change. But I also believe that the conversation can only be necessary if actual change occurs as a result of having it. That simply hasn't happened yet, and it doesn't seem like it's going to, so in my personal opinion, I'm kind of leaning towards the possibility that maybe it's not a necessary conversation anymore. And mind you, I am open to changing my mind on this, unlike some people, because oddly enough, I want to be wrong, and I very well could be. I think we all have the ability to change, no matter how difficult it may be. So I hope someday soon Bob and Mary Lou will realize that MAGA is an actual cult and they've been duped. Sure, it'll probably hurt, but so what? I mean, nobody's perfect. We all make mistakes, and we all have our very extended lapses in judgment. But whether or not most of us would like to admit it, sometimes it is easier to just be in our own little bubble and be biased and ignorant. That doesn't excuse anything that they believe, and it certainly doesn't make any of it okay, but that's human nature, unfortunately. But I do believe we can all be better, and I want that for Bob and Mary Lou. I want that for Chad and Haley. I can't imagine how difficult it must be to know that your parents are Nazi sympathizers and apologists. There's no easy answer for how to deal with this. I just hope that someday soon they'll be able to see reason and then move forward as a family who are on the same page. A family that doesn't have to be worried about asking whether or not American citizens deserve to be killed. A family who no longer needs to have the painful, but necessary, conversation.
I just never, growing up, thought that you were this person. I never thought that you would be like this.
Well, that's too bad. I never thought you'd turn out like this either.
Never in a million years did I think both of you.
Two of you did not turn out well for me.
I never thought you would support
I think you're both insane.
something so grotesque in all my life. And it's disappointing. You are disappointing.
You are disappointing to me.
I'm done.
No, Mom, don't be done. This is part of the hard conversations. This is what we're doing this show for.
Yeah, Mom's done. You know what? I'm done too. Let's shut this down.
But anyways, guys, thank you all so much for watching, and if you want to see more videos like this, then be sure to hit that subscribe button and notification bell so you're notified every time I upload a new video. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and leave me a comment letting me know what you guys want to see next. But other than that, guys, thank you all so much for watching, and have a great day.